Good evening to all the attendees. We shall start the webinar within a minute. The logins are happening. So we'll just wait for exactly 1 minute and we'll get started. Appreciate your patience. Here we go. Once again, good evening to all the attendees who have taken out time to join us on this webinar on business analytics and the future of industry. We are very pleased to have two distinguished guests who have joined us from the Math Company. Mr. Sayandeep Banerjee, the co-founder and the CEO of the Math Company. Welcome, Mr. Sayandeep. And we have Mr. Srinidhi Shama Rao, again from the Math Company. He is the head of innovation. Welcome, Mr. Srinidhi. The format of today's webinar is that we will begin the session with an address by Mr. Sayandeep Banerjee, and then we will have another session by Mr. Srinidhi Shama Rao, and subsequently we will open this forum for question and answer, where you will be free to post your questions in the Q&A panel, and I shall take up those questions and get them answered from the speakers. So just to give you a brief background of Mr. Sayandeep Banerjee, he comes with 20 years of experience in analytic ecosystem. He has spearheaded multiple analytics transformations for several Fortune 500 companies. Having been in the analytics industry since its nascency, he has worked both as a part of a large enterprise, setting up analytics capability, and as a service provider working with various enterprises. Sayandeep was the first employee of the largest pure play analytics service company, and as head of delivery was responsible for building a team of over 5,000 employees. He was also one of the founding members of GE Capital's Analytics Center. In 2006, he co-founded the Math Company and currently serves as the CEO of the Math Company. Mr. Sayandeep requests you to please share your opening thoughts with the audience. Over to you.
Great. Thank you, Professor Vikram, and welcome all of you guys to this session by the Way School. So at the very beginning, let me start by clarifying a few things, right? In a sense, I know many of you are confused with all this. First of all, the terminologies that goes around. We are talking about analytics. I'm sure you keep getting bombarded with terms like machine learning, artificial intelligence, data science, data engineering, so on and so forth. My only 2 cents there before I get started is, please don't get confused with terms, right? Because many people have asked me this question. Hey, I know you are talking about analytics. What about AI? What's happening there? What about machine learning? At the end of the day, let's all simplify this whole area into what we call as problem solving, leveraging information or leveraging data for better decision making. At the end of the day, as long as we are accomplishing that, let's not get confused by all these jargons around us, right? So that is my first thing. Now, when you talk about this industry, I've been fortunate enough to be in this industry for more than 2 decades now. So at least have a vantage point, right, from where I can at least say that in the last 2 decades, the kind of change, the kind of progress that we have seen for in this industry, in the analytics industry, is phenomenal, right? And it has happened. It has happened in all directions. What do I mean by all directions? I mean that the kind of problems that are getting solved when I got started, things that were not even imaginable. People could not even think of doing things which they are able to do today. Why they are able to do? Because the kind of data or information that are available today has kind of multiplied or grown so many folds. And the best example of that is if I look back, what used to be thought of in the past as data were only rows and columns in your Excel files or in your tabular format. But nowadays everything is data. This event that we are having, this talk that we are having, this itself is a data point, right? You can have data on several talks like this, and people actually analyze kind of several trends in terms of what the speaker said, what made an impact with the speaker. So anything that you can see, kind of be an image, be a picture, be a video, they are all data. Anything that you can hear, like any sound in a call center, like a call, that the recording of the call, the sound of it, all of that is data, right? I mean, music is analyzed quite a bit, so that is sound is data. Machine, the machines that works and it emanates different kind of signals. Those are very important data, and the simplest example of that is cars, for example, right? The car that we drive, it is also a machine, and it creates a lot of data in today's world. I'm sure you have heard about connected cars. So the cars create data as we drive them, as they move, and those data can be leveraged to understand the driver's driving pattern and so on and so forth. So while the problems that we can solve has grown in many folds, in many directions, very, very interesting problems have emerged, and I'm sure Srinidhi will later touch upon kind of some of them. That has been enabled by explosion of data, explosion of information. That has also been supported a lot of advancement in terms of technology that we can think of. What do I mean by that? I mean, like kind of storage technology, the way you can store data. Nowadays, volume of data, nobody I think cares about it. They just keep storing because storage has allowed you to do that. The computing power, the things that I remember in my early days when I started in my career, things that used to take probably some of the best SQL programmers would say that this I can really get this data out in 2 days, right? And I'm not joking, that there used to be kind of time when people would take that much of, and if you can really get something in 2 days, that's really, really efficient. Now the same thing can be done probably in less than 2 seconds in today, right? So the computing power and the ability that has improved. And then the different technology, be the neural network, all this machine learning method, the deep learning methods, the different techniques that has been kind of that has also evolved in the research area and now directly into the application area. That is also great. So you see that there are growth and advancements in different areas that helps at the end of the day for analytics or database decision making to be the center point of not just human life but also of industries, right? You look at any possible industry around us, not the conventional ones like the banks, the insurance companies, the airlines companies, they have always leveraged data. But nowadays, if you look at the retailers, kind of the not just general retailers but the luxury retailers that you can walk into, the FMCG, the consumer food manufacturers, the hotel industry, the manufactured industry, oil and gas, you just name it, energy, everywhere. I don't think there is any conversation today at any forum, be it the United Nations, be it the budget of the country, be it an annual investor briefing by some industry leaders. any of those addresses, I don't think are complete without those magic words of AI, artificial intelligence, analytics, machine learning, data, big data, and different terms that you keep hearing, right? So that is the power of it, and all that I kind of would like to also mention before I kind of pause and then hand over to Srinidhi to really kind of give you more examples and help you understand how analytics has been progressing, is that I talked about more and more type of problems, complex problems being solved. Other important thing is that when we talk about analytics, that is applicable to any industry, and I already mentioned that, right? It helps in automation, it helps in personalization, it helps in what we call as democratization. Kind of a lot of people who are not necessarily technically the best, but analytics have allowed them to really make the best of the decisions, right? Because of that, a lot of business models are changing and changing rapidly, right? I talked about connected cars and therefore the solutions around personal vehicles. Nowadays there is facial recognition based credit systems. So approval for a loan that used to take kind of sometimes months and then brought down to weeks can now happen in a few seconds and a few minutes. Helping facial recognition. And at the end of the day, it's changing life. It's not just changing business models. It's not just making things efficient, but it is changing life. Everything is about your smart device, data powered and data driven, a lot of things that we use on a day-to-day basis. So it's a very, very exciting area to be in, as particularly as a practitioner who is creating solution, also as a consumer who is, kind of consuming some of these solutions. And that's where I would, like to, I think that would hopefully give you start giving a sense of what it is, and hand it over to back to Professor Vikram and Srinidhi to take the kind of conversation ahead. Later on in the Q&A, I would love to see if I can kind of answer some question of yours. Sorry, you're on mute, Professor.
Sorry. Well, thank you very much, Saindev, for giving us that high-level view of analytics and setting the context. And now moving on, I would now like to introduce Mr. Srinidhi. Just a moment. Yes. So Srinidhi Rao is head of innovation at The Math Company. He has helped Fortune 500 companies take better decisions using data science, artificial intelligence, behavioral economics, design thinking, game theory, systems thinking, and other tools. Srinidhi's areas of interest and career focus is science and art of decision making, why people and organizations take decisions they take, and how to help them do a better job of it. 18 years of consulting life, working across industries, functions, and geographies. Currently, he's leading the innovation at The Math Company. That's a terrific profile, Srinidhi, and we are all excited to hear from you. Over to you, Srinidhi.
Thanks, Vikram. Hello, everybody. Let me just share my screen as I'm talking. Let me know if you can see it. All right. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
All right. Great. So yeah, before we get into the details, I just want to touch upon what Shayan just talked about. Which is basically across the industry today. So analytics and AI about 5 years ago or 10 years ago was just restricted to a few industries that had the kind of manpower and financial power to actually hire large teams and rent big softwares and big servers and eventually do a lot of algorithms, right? But today there is probably no industry out there that does not use analytics and AI in some way, shape, or form, either to understand customers or give a better customer experience, or to reduce cost and so on and so forth, right? So that is what we believe is the industry of today and industry of the future, right? So now let's try to understand the industry of the future, using a few stories, right? I just want to throw some light upon what's happening across the industry on a few specific aspects so that you get a feel of where the industry is headed, right? And why AI and analytics is going to be the driver of that. And then we'll talk about, okay, what all this means to, you and us, who are either aspiring data scientists or data scientists already. Okay. Great. Yeah, with that, let's go ahead with it. So there are two ways we can do this, right? Either we can keep it like, one way and boring, or in the meanwhile, I'll ask you a bunch of questions. I know you're muted, but you can use the chat button and answer the question so that we can keep it interactive, right? The choice is yours. All right, with that. So I want to talk about the first one, right? First trend that's happening across industry today, which is called as hyper personalization, right? So personalization, as you know, right, that you experience when you go to an apparel store, for example, right? They will give you the right size and the right color and the right material of your taste and so on and so forth, right? Personalization, has been something that's natural to human beings in trade and commerce, right? But what's so hyper about it, right? So any thoughts? What is hyper personalization? Right? You can use your chat window and answer the questions. Vikram, if you can just look at the chat window and let me what people are saying, that will be great.
Sure.
Saurabh, yeah. Right. So what's so hyper about personalization?
You can also use question and answer panel.
All right. Any responses out there, Vikram?
No comments as of now.
Right.
Smidhi, I'm not sure if we have enabled the chat window.
Oh, okay.
For the audience.
We want to do that so that we could.
Yes. In the questions panel, though, I have got a couple of responses now. Kamal Gupta Roy says 1:1.
Mm-hmm.
And Jyotinathan Ganguly says rapid turnaround with custom requests.
Mm-hmm.
And feeling personal. Kamal Gupta again says feeling personal.
Absolutely. Right. So let's take an example to see what is hyper personalization. Okay. So personalization is very straightforward, right? You go to a particular store or a website, you know exactly what you want, right? You ask for that particular, size or flavor or whatever, right? You ask for it and you get it, right? That's personalization, right? You don't want to wear somebody else's size, in an apparel, right? So, but if you go to Netflix today, for example, right? So Netflix, for example, knows through some way, shape or form, we'll figure out the algorithm later. It already knows that you like, you might like Stranger Things, right? Now, and it will recommend Stranger Things to you, right? That is personalization, right? What is hyper personalization? Netflix not only knows that you like Stranger Things, but it also has a very, very good idea about why you might like Stranger Things. Is it because you like, children's, movies and TV shows? Or is it because you like adventure and child adventure and so on and so forth? Or because you like horror, so on and so forth. Okay, so it likes, knows why you might like Stranger Things because it has, read you in the past so much in terms of, what you have selected, what you have watched, and so on and so forth, right? And based on that, while recommending Stranger Things, it will recommend the appropriate thumbnail to you. They will have thousands of thumbnails for the same, movie or a TV show, right? And it will show the kind of thumbnail that you might like. If you're a guy who like, for example, children and adventure, it will show you, the thumbnail that has children adventure, right? If you like horror, for example, it will show you the thumbnail that has horror, right? So on and so forth, right? So it is not only appealing to the what you like, but it also based on why you like it, recommend it appropriately, right? Now Netflix has been doing this for a while, but today any other industry you go has been practicing hyper personalization, which is basically requires them to understand not only what you like, but deep inside who you are as a person, why you like something, right? So on and so forth, right? And then recommending things to you, appropriately, so that what they recommend is really made for you and not, for somebody similar to you, which was the concept of recommendation engine 5 years ago, right? So that's what hyper personalization. Let's take one more example of a home improvement, retailer in the US, with which, in fact, I have been working, for a while, right? So suppose they are recommending a dining table, right? Now, based on the social media profile of the customer, as well as what he or she has bought in the past from their website and so on and so forth, they have a very good idea about how big is your family size, how big is your apartment, right? How many, and what's your affordability and so on and so forth, right? Now, based on that, if you are a family of 4 people staying in a 2,400 square foot apartment, so on and so forth, kind of luxurious and being able to afford, they will recommend a nice large dining table in your kitchen space, which is quite large and so on and so forth. Whereas if they know that you're living in a small studio apartment, alone, right? They might recommend a very small dining table to you with just, 1 or 2 chairs, right? And very minimalistic and simplistic in design and so on and so forth, right? And it just doesn't end there, right? So suppose they're recommending a dining table, with a sofa and so on and so forth in your living room, right? Now, based on your past purchasing history, they also know what kind of texture you might like on the sofa. Do you like velvet? Do you like leather? What kind of upholstery do you like? So on, right? And then put a sofa according to you so that it feels as if it's your home for you when you look at the advertisement, right? And what's more, suppose you have bought a blue paint from them like 1 year ago, they have a fairly good idea that you might have painted your wall blue, right? And so they show all these things in a blue background so that it perfectly looks like your home when you're looking at that and you're like tempted to purchase, right? Now we did something like this with a home improvement retailer, as I told, right? And the conversion rates, immediately shot up, pre and post, because people felt that yes, this is made for them, rather than somebody who looks like them, right? So this is the power of hyper personalization, and pretty much every industry today, right, is practicing hyper personalization as a way to connect and engage with their audience. With that, let's go to the next one that I wanted to talk about. Right? So, do you guys understand when we talk about conversational relationships with machines, right? So when was the last time you talked to a machine? Of course, we all interact with machines, right? Drive a car, for example, right? But when was the last time you talked to a machine? Right? You can again open your chat window or question answer button and take a guess. When was the last time you conversed with a machine? Any thoughts around, have you used chatbots on your e-commerce websites, right? So you go to a website and say, hey, I am Lara here. How can I help you? Or you go to your net banking site, right? And there'll be another chat button that pops up, right? And, it says, okay, I'm Amber, and, how can I help you, right? So on and so forth. Do you guys recall having chatted with a machine, right, in the near past?
We have some responses.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Vikram.
Kamal says Alexa. Zia Khatib says IoT.
Fantastic. Absolutely.
And yeah, we have some more coming in.
Go ahead.
That's a Go IBBO bot. Chats on help center like Swiggy helpline.
Exactly.
Siri.
Exactly.
Yeah, these are the responses.
So 10 years ago, if you did, right, all our interactions with machine was in terms of, pressing some buttons and so on and so forth, right? In the big industrial age era, right? You had to press a lot of buttons to make the machine work, right? And then it slowly move on to, click, click, click and click, right? But now today, you just chat with the machine. Either you talk through Alexa or you type in a normal English sentence and it interprets and so on and so forth. So our relationship with machines is becoming a lot more human, right? And that trend is here to stay and and go further and further, where you really cannot differentiate if you are talking to a machine or a human being, right? Now, even reporting in organizations, for example, right? So 5 years ago, if you went and saw in organizations, every organization uses a Tableau or a ClickView or a Power BI for the reporting purposes, right? And suppose you are you're a business owner or a director in a particular department, right? You would call the Tableau team and give your requirements, and they take 3 months to develop that report for you, right? And then you use that report in a meeting or whatever, right? And if you have a follow-up question, again, you have to call that team and ask that follow-up question so that they can do enhancement on that report, right? That's how all the static reports used to look like, right? But today it's not like that anymore, right? So reporting paradigm has changed completely. Most of the reports in organizations today are upcoming reports just look like a Google search engine. You ask a question, your report pops up as a response to it. So on the spot report gets generated based on what questions you're asking, right? So very conversational relationships with, with machines, right? And as somebody pointed out, Alexa, you can, say, okay, Alexa, how is the weather today, right? Or Alexa, can you order food for me from this particular restaurant, right? So on and so forth. And last but not the least, machines are catering to people's, emotional needs, right? So I just want to call upon, this site called, I don't know if you guys know. So this thing called Mitsuku, right? Mitsuku is today's world's most advanced, chatbot, right? It can chat pretty much like a human being, right? Now, the previous, previous generations of chatbots weren't able to, carry the conversation forward if you had like a one-word answer and so on and so forth, right? Or they weren't able to understand sarcasm, for example. But Mitsuko is a very, very, very advanced chatbot. It can understand, it can understand your emotions. It can understand sarcasm, so on and so forth, right? And if you try to mess around with it, it will, give it back to you in terms of a very harsh sentence and so on and so forth, right? And we could have had some fun, chatting on Mitsuko, but let's not do it here. But I would call upon you to, go to PandoraBot's site and, look for Mitsuko. No, after this, meeting. It's but only thing is I want to, warn you that this is quite addictive. So be careful before starting off with Mitsuko. Now, and also this kind of thing should be quite common for you, right? So you go to a particular website and then it will tell you what products it has, right? And then, and based on what is the particular problem or purpose for which you have come to that website, right? It will, recommend the particular products for you from the website and so on and so forth. This is quite a common experience. All of you might have gone through it, right? So this is what we are talking about. So the future of the industry is moving towards humans and machines having a very human relationship with each other in terms of being very conversational, being able to understand each other's language, so on and so forth. Right. And of course, we talked about Mitsuko. Another thing I wanted to touch about, right, is what I call as the experience economy. All right. So, so what is experience economy, by the way, right? The focus, all the focus on customer experience, right? So why do you think, right, there is so much focus on customer experience these days, right? Any thoughts? You can just go back to your chatbots and your question answer window, right, and talk through it. So why is the economy moving towards experience economy? Why is so when I say experience economy, what I mean is that customer experience is at the focal point, right, of everything that any company does today, right? The question is why? Why is customer experience so important today? Any thoughts?
Waiting for the responses.
Sure.
Kamal says experience is what makes customer loyal.
Absolutely, no doubt about it.
For customer retention, sustainable growth, competition. These are the responses.
Absolutely. So all are right? So let me give you a brief background of how the industrial era progressed, okay? And that will give you a perspective of where we are coming from and why customer experience is at the center of the focus, right? So let's start like 50, 60 years ago when the World War happened, right? When the World War just ended and the industrial era just began, right? Now, suppose a lot of companies started doing a lot of products. The workforce came back from the war front, back to the industry. People were looking for jobs and so on and so forth, right? The very fact that so a lot of companies started creating products, right? And the very fact that you have a product, right, but the other person doesn't have a product itself gave you the competitive advantage because you have this product, right? Now we can go and sell to a lot of people. You make money. The other guy doesn't have a good product, right? He's just plucking it from the trees or whatever it is, right? It's not a product. So, he doesn't sell, right? That itself became the competitive advantage. Right? But what happened over a period of 5 to 6 years or 10 years or so, right? Lot of companies learned how to do all these basic products from, soaps to shampoos to, whatnot, right? So all the daily use products, right? Due to which just having a product itself is not the competitive advantage anymore. If Unilever has a product, Procter & Gamble also has a product, Colgate also has a product, right? So what's the differentiator, right? Then people started looking for, okay, then how can I make sure that my product can reach more people than your product? Okay, my product can reach, only the urban America, right? Whereas, how can I make sure this other product reaches the entire rural America also, right? Or even Mexico and Canada, right? And a part of Europe as well, so that I have access to a lot of customers, due to which I gain competitive advantage. My product is very similar to your product, but I have a lot of reach, which we call distribution in our technical language, right? So as the distribution increases, you have access to a lot more customers, due to which that gives a competitive advantage. Now, over a period of time, everybody else also learned how to distribute, how to have a distributor, how to make sure that it reaches a large customer base and so on and so forth, right? Now, distribution wasn't a competitive advantage within the next 10 years, right? So people started looking, okay, what's the next big thing, right? Then came, what I call as branding. I not only have a product, right? The nice, beautiful soap, but I package it calling it Sunlight, right? Now, and I give a particular color to it and shape to it, etc. Right? So that as soon as people see, sunlight, on the shop floor, right? And as against, just a soap, right? Then there is a recognition value to it, right? And then they go naturally pick the thing that they can recognize and they're familiar with, right? So familiarity, has a lot of advantage in marketing, right? So entire branding world, began from there, right? So people started investing in branding, right? So brands that could be recognized had a distinct competitive advantage versus brands that could not be recognized, right? And that continued for a while, and even today, all of us know the importance of branding, right? Went on to branding, and then again, but everybody figured out, branding doesn't work for a lot of time because everybody else also started doing a lot of branding, right? It's no more a competitive advantage 15 years later, right? Then people, in the meanwhile, all the automation and computerization began with, IBM doing a lot of good things for the world, right? So on and so forth, right? So people started doing mass production, computerization, offshoring the production to China and East and all that kind of things, right? Due to which, the world started looking at competitive advantage through cost savings, right? Now, again, as you know, now today every company sources from China and hopefully, from India going forward and so on and so forth, right? So, but everybody is able to save cost, right? So, what's the next big thing? In the meanwhile, as companies were looking for, okay, what's the next big thing to gain competitive advantage? Something really, really interesting happened, which is the world started creating a lot of data on one side, right? On the other side, computerization and hardware became very, very cheap. And the third side, algorithms and math, started progressing a lot, right? And all this together helped you to understand the customer a lot better, right? So today we can understand each customer separately of the millions of customers that companies have, right? And due to which it became feasible to provide a unique experience to each customer based on what she likes, why she likes, and so on and so forth, right? And the economy became an experience-driven economy, right? And that's going to stay for a while, right? Before every company figures out how to provide that kind of experience, every company figures out how to understand the customer so well and so on, right? And then the competitive advantage will start reducing, and they have to look for the next big thing, right? So this is how the world of industrialization began, right? And today it's like analytics is an idea whose time has come because of the three things that we were talking about, right? Hardware is so cheap, math has developed so much, and there is so much data all around us, due to which understanding the customer and catering to her has become a lot more easier, right? And fast, so that you can do things in a reasonable amount of time that still has relevancy. Right? So this is where the experience economy is headed, right? Let's look at just one or two examples that will make this thing real to you, right? So if you go to any of these supermarkets like Macy's and stuff like that, right? You have Sephora has put up these digital mirrors. Okay, what a digital mirror does, is that it lets the person try out various things, from Sephora, various products, right, without actually trying them out, which makes it, cheaper both for the organization and the customer, right? In this case, the lady is trying out, various things that they apply on the eye. I don't know what they call that, right? So that one, she could have as well tried lipstick and whatever, right? So she can try out different colors and different, different things on her face and actually see how she looks without actually using any of the product. It's completely artificial intelligence, driven by augmented reality. Right now, Sephora's virtual mirrors have become, very popular across the supermarket chains. Right. Now, similarly, this was an experiment done by Unilever. Okay, so just watch this.
Be good, eat
They had a
clean,
competition,
be polite.
right?
Pick
For
a job,
I think
earn
some
a
major
dime,
cities in the US,
remember to save with
where you
caution.
download augmented reality app,
Stay in
right?
line
And you are
and
going on the
slowly
street, for
earn your
example.
way up the
Right?
ladder.
Now, in
Only
that
thing
street,
is,
right, it looks at
life
the
is
entire,
not to be earned.
entire area of the street,
Life
and
is for the taking.
you can see some virtual boxes right out there, right? And you have to capture those boxes in this app, right? Now everything else is real, the building is real, people are real, only those boxes are virtual. Okay, now you have to capture that box and hold it with you for X number of hours, right? And if you do that, the box becomes yours, right? And then you can pick up those boxes. And think of what is there in the box, right? The box has Unilever products, right? Now that way, is a very, very fun way, right? They are making Unilever products something that you will, go after and make it. See, look at this. Everything else is around, you see, is very real, only except for the boxes. Now, it gives so much recall value on such a customer experience that without you knowing that you're becoming a loyal customer of Unilever products, you're actually becoming that. And every think of these thousands of parcels, each of them have a Unilever product, of course. So this not only became a hit, but became an addiction to a lot of people, which is good thing for the company, but not a good thing for the customer, right? But doesn't matter, right? The power of augmented reality and power of creating that kind of customer experience and creating that loyalty, right? Without the customer knowing that they are developing that loyalty because they're getting such a good experience out of it, right? That's the beauty of marketing, right? How are we doing on time? I think if I look, let's take 2 or 3 minutes and cover 1 or 2 more trends, right? The other thing is technological singularity, which is basically, if you, again, a few years ago, right? Think of AI, think of automation, robotics, IoT, 3D printing, AR, VR, all these, right, were different topics. And the departments dealing with it were all different. And then PhDs, people who did one could not understand the other, and so on and so forth, right? But today the world is integrating and getting into singularity of all these technologies put together and creating products that use, if not all of these, a lot of these technologies together, right? So it's what we call as integrated product design, right? I'll show you one very interesting example. So this is a this is a machine/app that Volvo created. Okay, so this is a Volvo car, right? And Volvo wants to interview mechanics, for that car. Okay, so look at what happens. So this is the interview candidate coming there.
Welcome, Oliver. Glad to see you put on your blue shirt for the interview.
Yes, indeed. You're welcome.
Are you feeling stressed?
Just a bit,
Please allow me to play some piano music to make you feel more comfortable.
I feel a bit better now, thank you.
Glad to hear that. Tell me, why should I hire you?
I've been passionate about courses. I'm a boy.
Okay, let's do a little test. Can you show me where my electric compressor is?
Sure. Here.
Perfect. Can you explain how my 360-degree camera...
Right, so think of this. The car is doing interview for its own mechanic, right? And this is a beautiful combination of lot of these things, going together. There is, there is IoT there. There is, of course, automation, robotics, chatbots, and so on and so forth. All of them getting together in order to create that integrated experience where the mechanic, pretty much feels that, the human being is interviewing him. There is, it can identify that he's wearing a blue shirt. It can identify through the voice that, he's a bit stressed, and so on and so forth, right? So what a human-like interaction. And that wouldn't have been possible if all these departments are working in their own silos without understanding each other's world, right? The world is moving towards an integrated product design where all these are coming together, right? And that's the beauty of it. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about, how the world of, 3D printing has evolved and so on and so forth. But looks like we are kind of, we have only 15 minutes left. But just so that you guys know, this is the world's largest 3D printed building. It's in Dubai right now, right? And they're doing a few more in California and other places. Another thing I wanted to talk to you about in terms of a trend was, okay, artificial intelligence is one thing, but, artificial creativity where, computers and AI algorithms can create their own, music. For example, this is a music that's created by an algorithm, right? So it looks at thousands of different artists' compositions, right? And sees, what combination of notes work well and what doesn't work well based on the user feedback, and then creates its own music, right? And similarly, of course, you have computers and AI, systems that can write books and also read books and understand them and summarize it for you and so on and so forth. So there is a site called, Books by AI, as you're seeing here, right? And this has all the books that are written by algorithms. Okay. Of course, it's not perfect. There are, grammatical mistakes and all that you'll see here, but doesn't matter. You know where the world is headed, right? In 1 or 2 years, they'll figure out how to fix those grammatical mistakes. So there's another thing that's happening where computers can actually create and not just think. Yes, so we saw a few trends, where the world is headed, right? I definitely, of course, can't cover all the trends, but I hope you got a feel of where the world is headed and what is the industry of the future, right? Now let's spend a few minutes understanding what it means to all of us, right? Aspiring business analysts, aspiring data scientists, or practicing data scientists for that matter, right? We'll just cover 2 or 3 of them. First one is what I call as micro verticalization, which is basically in the past, again 2-3 years ago, 5 years ago, sir, we were just talking about okay, analytics is just algorithms. At the end of the day, it can pretty much apply to so regression is a regression irrespective of you're talking in the context of a CPG or a retail or insurance or something else, right? But today what's happening is it's getting very, very micro verticalized in terms of which vertical or a sub vertical you're talking about. And also the data scientists need to have what we call a situational awareness, which is a deep understanding of the domain. Right? Let me just give you one example that will make it clear for you. Nikon, I hope you have heard about Nikon. Nikon is an amazing company, best in its field, right? And they have come up with the best product at any point in time throughout the last 15-20 years, right? Now, Nikon came up with a very interesting and powerful technology. Okay, so if I am clicking a photo of yours, right now, the moment I click, right, suppose you have closed your eyes, right, it will open for you to, it will wait for you to open your eyes before it actually clicks. Fantastic technology by any standard. So suppose you are closing your eye, you are the subject of the photo, you are closing your eye, it will wait till you open your eye till it, before it clicks. Okay. Now, but there was one flaw there. Right? Suppose it is a Korean subject on the other side, it never clicks. Right? So what was happening here, right? So what went wrong was the fact that they were not able to think through every eventuality of the kind of data on which the product needs to be tested. Right? Due to which what happened was that the product bitterly failed till they fixed it. Right? There's no point even if it works only for white Americans. Right? It has to work for everybody who purchased this. Right? And it took a while and a lot of PR before it was fixed. Right? So this is just one example where just understanding or coming up with an amazing algorithm is not sufficient. You should have situational awareness of that particular vertical or the domain, right? And train your algorithm and apply it in that context. Other thing I want to talk to you about in terms of what it means to you and I, right, is productization, right, and polarization of skill sets, right? So where the world is headed is that again, because it's so productized, right? So for example, the algorithm that figures out that this is an eye, right, and whether it's closed or open, right? That's a product. That algorithm is a product, right? Now, if you are an Nikon employee, you can use it, to figure out if the subject is closing the eye. If I am an employee of some other company, I can use it for something totally different and so on and so forth, right? Now, because of this, right? Now, products come from one side. Application of that is a very, very different skill set, right? Again, if you go back to this example, coming up with this algorithm to figure out this is an eye and to figure out that whether it's closed or open is just one product. But the Nikon employee applies it in the context of a camera to figure out where the data comes from, what processing needs to be done, what all it will be trained on, and then where the data output goes out, right? So it's a very domain specific knowledge. So creating the product and applying the product in a domain are two very different skill sets done by two very different people, right? Even here, right, for example, right, we talked about the algorithm that figures out, what is the customer like? She likes the blue color in the background. She likes the velvet texture on the sofa and not leather, for example, right? And she's a 4-member family and likes the 4-seater, dining table and so on and so forth, right? The algorithm that figures out that is one thing, right? Whereas the algorithm that figures out, okay, all this to be applied in the context of a home improvement, where these three things come together, the blue wall and the blue sofa and the wooden dining table come together, right, in the context for this particular customer, that matching algorithm, that has to be done by somebody who understands the domain. That's the application of the product, right? So there are two very different things. So creation of the product and application of the product in the business context are two different skill sets being done by two very different people sitting in different companies, right? And that is where we are headed today, right? And as the world goes, as you become business analyst and data scientist, you have to figure out where you fit in, right? The product development group or the product application group. Of course, I know we'll say wherever the money is, but money is there in both the places. You just have to figure out where you fit in. Last but not the least, I want to talk about cross-functional integration. All right. Again, because we are talking about integrated product design, right? It's so where today, if you know only one of the things, okay, I develop algorithms, I develop applications, right? So on and so forth, it doesn't work. It is moving towards a full stack data scientist or a full stack developer, right? So if you are a developer today or a data scientist, It's not just sufficient if you know algorithms. Of course, you should know algorithms really, really well. But beyond that, you have to understand a little bit of ML engineering. You have to understand a little bit of data engineering, UI, UX, application development, problem solving, and so on and so forth, so that you can interact with all these guys and the team as a whole, can work with each other seamlessly, right? And the center of all this, of course, is domain awareness, as we were talking about. Otherwise, you will have an icon moment. So just having one skill set is not sufficient. Although you should be really, really good at one thing, you should have at least the basic knowledge of everything else so that you can interact with the rest of the team. So yes, so polarization of skill sets, cross-functional integration, and micro-verticalization. All right. So this is where you guys should be thinking about, and if you want to become successful business analysts and data scientists. So with that, pause here, Vikram, and open it up for any questions.
Only one word, Srinidhi. It's thrilling to see the way the world is going to shape up with analytics, AI, and ML. It only is getting exciting, and very curious to see what kind of a world we are going to be living in the coming 5 years or 10 years from now. Excellent. Now the question, the forum is open. I request all the attendees to please post your questions. Please feel free to ask anything and everything from Srinidhi. Yes, some questions have come up. There's a question from Abhilash. He is asking, what about privacy of customers?
That's a fantastic point, right? So while doing all this, there is a lot of movement, as in terms of GDPR and and North American Data Security Treaty, and India is of course coming up with its own data protection bill and so on and so forth, right? So there is an equal movement on the data privacy side of things. Only issue is that those laws and data protection laws are not equally stringent across geographies. So what is allowed in North America might not be allowed in Europe, and vice versa, right? So that's where the issue is. But the world is definitely thinking about data privacy as we are doing this. There is no doubt. Although it's lagging behind the development of technology, as
Thank you, Srinidhi, to answer that.
but soon enough you will have you will have it catch up.
Great. Well, the forum is still open. Please go ahead and ask your questions. Meanwhile, Srinidhi, one question from me. Does one need to be an engineer to get into analytics?
No, that was I would say that was like 5 years ago thought process. So today, as you know, so there are only two types of people in the world. So people who will create those analytics products, and people who will use those analytics products in a business context, right? And there is going to be nobody else, in the sense that either you're a creator or a user, and there is not going to be a third person who is neither a creator nor a user, right? Which basically,
wonderful.
Whether you are an engineer or a chartered accountant, or architect or whatever, right? Doesn't really matter, right? You have to know a little bit of analytics. Within the context of whatever you are doing, doesn't really matter. You don't need to be a high-end data scientist who will create products, not necessarily required. Even to be good at what you do, you have to understand a little bit of analytics, because as you clearly saw, that's where the world is headed.
Great. So as I asked this question, Pujita Kalyanam also posted the same question. Well, Pujita, your question is answered already. There's a question from Harshit. He asked, how will you differentiate between data analyst and business analyst? That's an interesting question.
Right. I don't know if there is a need to differentiate, first of all, right? So as Ryan was talking right in the beginning of the call, right? So at the end of the day, all these things, so today, not only data analyst and business analyst, there is I saw a word called ML analyst somewhere, and so on and so forth, right? Okay, I can give you at least 100 different jargon keywords, right? So I would say those things really do not matter, because a lot of companies are using this just to either just to attract talent, right, or to create sub skill sets, and so that everybody is differentiated from one another, right? So don't really worry too much about it. Are you skilled enough to be in the world where data is used to take decisions? That's what you need to worry about. In that, where you will fit in, whether you will fit in as a data analyst or a business analyst, right? With your career will figure it out based on your own skill sets and opportunities. You will figure it out. Don't worry so much about these jargons and keywords. Not really worth it. You can have by heart 100 keywords. Okay, then what are you achieving?
Good. Well, we move on. Nagraj has posted a question. I'll read out.
Mhm.
Will these areas thwart the human experiences with social change? When a customer interacts with the salesperson, it makes his buying more interesting. I think there is a comment as well as a question to you.
Mhm.
So, will these areas thwart the human experiences with social change? That's the question.
Yes. So that's a fantastic question. I don't know if Shine is there on the call. He might have some interesting thoughts on this as well, right? But my take on that is that see what happened before and after the lockdown, right? So all of us were thinking, in February and March that okay, the moment we have a lockdown, all of us have to work from home. We are going to miss the social aspect of going to office and working with our colleagues and so on and so forth. So the corporate world is going to come crashing down, right? That was the thought process in March, right? And we were all thinking about it, right? So how will we even survive without interacting with our colleagues and so on and so forth, right? But come August, September, October, November, and now today is December, we are like pretty much used to the work from home culture, and college kids are actually learning, using online learning from home, and we are all working from home and so on and so forth, right? So it is a transition of our mental models, right? But is technology catching up to cater to your needs and your emotions? Absolutely, right? But are they equivalent of a human being? No. But is that a showstopper? Absolutely not, right? So very soon, as the Amazon transition happened over the last 10 years, right? So 10 years ago, nobody used to buy from online, right? All the technology was still there, because there was a trust factor, right? I want to go to a shop and purchase. Today, 90% of the people who are online are purchasing on Amazon, right? So you get used to it. So it's a transition of your mental models than the technology catching up itself.
Great.
Yeah.
So Shayandeep is also here. So would you like to add something?
Yeah.
Shayandeep?
So I think Srinidhi answered what I think. I think that's the good part. We think alike. That I think you're thinking from the current mental model. What has happened in the past, what has worked in the past, is not necessarily what will happen in the future. But also keep in mind that the same question came up when the machines got when the factory models came in, right? People said, "Oh my God, it is so much better to have handmade stuff. Now things will be made in a factory, in a machine. Will it be good enough?" I think what it allows, and this is also exact analogy. What it allows, that it allows you to do things a lot more and a lot more efficiently. And yes, if you still want to have an experience, I'm sure there will be experiences. So while we have machine made stuff, we still have handicraft or handmade things as kind of a one-off experience. And sometimes they are also probably more expensive as well, right? So I don't think this will be necessarily this will stop you from doing kind of other things which have more social interactions and stuff like that.
Got it. Great. Thank you, Shayandeep, for adding that perspective. Here is a question from Abhilash. He asks, what are the skills needed to survive in this sector, and what are the job roles available for a management graduate? Yeah. Also, Srinidhi, could you just stop sharing this slide? I think that will give a better view for the audience as well.
Yes. Just give me 1 minute.
Thank you.
All right.
Yes. So, yeah, here you go.
Great. Yes. Sorry, what was the question? Yeah.
Abhilash's question is, what are the skills that are needed to survive in this sector, and what are the job roles available for MBA?
Absolutely. Yeah. So the second question is easier. So let's tackle that one first. So as we were talking about, the skill sets that are required in one of the slides, right? So at the center of all that, right, is your ability to apply all these products. Think of every algorithm as a product, right? So you have to apply all that in the context of your business, right? Now, where does the MBA graduate come into the picture, right? So one is obviously you learn your domain in the MBA, and secondly, and more importantly, you learn, to basically solve problems, right? And thirdly, hopefully you have learned to say good stories so that you can sell your thought process, right? So all these things together formulate what an MBA would do in the organization. So that's not very different from what you would have done in the past, which is solve problems and tell stories or help organizations take decisions. And that's going to absolutely stay, pre AI and post AI, right? It's not going to change any differently. But where you're going to add additional value in a AI driven world is that, creating these experiences in the context of a particular business, right? And figure out, for example, prioritizing the right problems to be solved by your organization. That's a purely MBA, MBA's skill set, right? So on and so forth, right? So that's where I would say you would add value, and which is no different from
Thank you, Srinidhi. Okay, I hope that question is answered. The next one is from Praveen Kumar. To excel in business analytics, what are the courses I have to learn as a management graduate, and how it will help in my career as a management graduate? I would like to answer that question, Praveen. V School has launched a collaborative program in partnership with IBM, and the program is called Leveraging Analytics in Business. That's a 10-month blended program where you have the live classes, as well as you have campus immersion sessions at the end of every module. I will strongly recommend you to review this program, because this is definitely amongst the top rated program in terms of the curriculum that has been designed. And a couple of key USPs of the program is that, one, it is a collaborative program. IBM and V School have come together. Two, 50% of the program is delivered by the subject matter experts from IBM, unlike any other partnership that IBM has in the country with any other academic institution. This is the only program offered by a B school where IBM is directly delivering the program. In other partnerships, they do train the trainer, whereas here they are directly coming and interacting with the students. Second thing is, this program entitles you for a dual certification. One certification from V School, and the other one, you get IBM badges at the end of every module. Third one, you run a capstone project. Right from the beginning of the course till the end, you will be working on a project with the support of the project guides that are available both from V School as well as IBM. The next benefit for you is that you will get career assistance. If at all you're looking for pursuing your career, advancing the career, and looking for alternate options, then you will have the even the lab practices also is going to be virtual mode. We are using a LMS called Nobot, which is again an IBM partner learning platform. Entire program, anytime, anywhere learning is enabled in that. So you will have that freedom to learn anytime, anywhere, any device. Right? There are lot more features and benefits that we will have to brief you and educate you about. What we can do is that we can set up a call with our education consultants so that you can have a detailed conversation and know more about the program, and then accordingly take the call. And yes, this program is open for everybody, be it management graduates or engineers or commerce graduates or arts. The basic qualification has to be a graduate with 50% pass percentage. Given that, you can enroll for the program and build a career for yourself in analytics. Right. I'm sorry to hold you on that, Srinidhi.
No problem. Yeah.
Well, moving on, there is another question from Amit Bhatt. He asks, can we refine the way data is captured, as 70 to 80% of the total time is required for data cleaning?
Yes, that is a problem today, and it's going to stay as a problem for the foreseeable future. What is getting quote unquote commoditized, is building all these algorithms. For example, today, if you want to do a regression or a random forest or a SVM or whatever, there are ready-made codes for that. You can just drag and drop those codes or ready-made libraries for that, right? So that part of the work is getting smaller and smaller. But the part where you need to figure out what is the right data to be captured, think through the feature engineering, as well as actually get the data and clean it up and make it usable, that part is going to stay like that for a while now. Unfortunately, yes, that's the fact.
Wonderful. Thank you, Srinidhi. Any more questions? Yes, we have last 2 minutes to wind up the session. Please go ahead and ask. Yeah, will AI lead to unemployment? Okay, I think we are talking about, Abhilal, we are actually talking about opportunities opening up for professionals like you. But however, I would want Srinidhi to add more to that.
Yeah, by tomorrow morning, all of us will be jobless. I'm just kidding. No, so there are there are many reasons why that is not going to be the case. Right?
No, never.
First of
Yeah,
all,
it's
what's
not.
happening is that while the world of AI is getting improved and improved, there are unique people who will create that AI in order to replace some of the mundane stuff that we are doing, right? So that's one thing. And secondly, what's going to happen is if AI stays to its promise of actually delivering automation and efficiencies to you, right? Now, what are the companies going to do, right? So they're going to use that efficiency, which is the additional cash that's generated, right, to invest back into the business and do more things, do more businesses, right? So if our businesses become more and more efficient, it's actually good for everybody, right? And so if anything, there are going to be more and more jobs created, right? So absolutely not. So it's not going to lead to unemployment or anything like that. If anything, there's going to be more and more employment. Only thing is that the nature of job might shift, right? So what was being done manually, repeatedly, again and again and again from Monday morning to Friday evening in the past would now be taken away by an algorithm or automation bot, right? Now you need to move to higher levels of jobs that will require thinking, that will require judgment and so on and so forth, right? So is a reskilling required? Yes. But is there going to be joblessness? Absolutely not.
That's absolutely right, Srinidhi. So Abhilash, you don't have to worry about unemployment. It's a general pattern the businesses go through historically and from centuries. If you look back, there has always been that some jobs have become obsolete and they have become redundant and they have disappeared, and the new jobs have emerged simultaneously. Right? So as long as you are upskilling and reskilling yourself, as long as you can keep yourself relevant in the industry, you definitely have a job for yourself. And the mantra is upskill and reskill. So learning is become continuous. You just cannot stop learning, come what may. The average shelf life of any learning in the current market scenario typically is about 14 to 18 months. By the time, if you've done a particular program upskilling, you spent a year or so, you already are outdated. There is something else that has come up, so you need to continuously keep learning. Right. Here is a question from Harshit Sethi. What do recruiters look for in a fresher in general for a business analytics role? Yeah, that's the question for you, Srinidhi.
Yeah.
Could you just
Go ahead, sir. Sorry, Vikram, you're breaking. Yeah, I'm not sure if people are able to hear me. I think Vikram froze for some reason. Yeah, now I
I
hear you, Vikram. Sorry.
Srinidhi,
You froze for a minute. Yeah.
yes, I was rebooted. I'm not sure whether you followed the question.
No.
Okay, one moment. Okay, Harshit is asking, what do recruiters look for in a fresher in general for a business analytics role?
Yeah, that's so. Again, it's not any different from what we were looking for freshers in 5 years ago. So basically, what we look for is, can you solve problems? So if I tell you a problem, can you understand that problem first of all and decipher the problem? Basically, break it down into smaller problems, right? And solve that problem, and then convey it back to me in a way that I can understand. Right. So simple 3-step process, right? You understanding the problem, you breaking it down into smaller relevant problems and solving each of those relevant boxes and putting them all together, and then communicating it back to me in a way that is understandable and acceptable to me, right? So these are the 3 skills that doesn't require any amount of technical knowledge or anything like
Thank you, Srinidhi.
needs you to be a good thinker and a good communicator.
Great. Pujita is asking a question. Can only engineers take up analytics field? Pujita, Srinidhi already answered that, and he said no. It's the field is not restricted only to engineers. Anybody and everybody with passion for analytics can enter this field. We have come to almost to the fag end of the session, so I'm just taking one last question. Of course, there are still a lot more that have come, Srinidhi, but with the constraint of the time, I'm just taking this last question from Monica. She's asking a very interesting question. She asked, does age and past professional experience matters for thinking to start analytics career?
The simple answer is absolutely not, right? But the more longer this one answer is, while anybody and everybody has to start an analytics career today, otherwise you won't even survive in the industry. But what you take up as your role will differ based on where you come from and what all you have done in the past, right? So, for example, if you are a mid-level executive already, for example, in a supply chain, team of a large organization, once you become analytically enabled or educated, what you will do might be very different from a fresh graduate, right? So on and so forth, right? So how you contribute or how you add value to the world through analytics might be different based on where you come from. But does it stop you? Absolutely not. Everybody has to go through, otherwise you won't even survive in the industry.
Great. Well, with that, we've come to the closing hour. I hope the audience has liked the session, at least the reactions that I'm getting in the chat window or the Q&A panel indicates me that they have thoroughly enjoyed your session, Srinidhi, and a lot of them are actually thanking you. And along with all the attendees, even the vSchool and myself, sincerely thank Shayandeep and you for coming and sharing your vast knowledge in such a simpler manner with the audience here. I really thank you for taking out your time and accepting our invitation to come on to this webinar. We've thoroughly enjoyed that. And I also would like to thank all the participants. Though it was a 4:30 to 5:30 window, you guys have made it to attend this webinar. It very clearly shows the interest that you have in the subject. And and just to reiterate, I already talked about the 10-month leveraging business analytics program jointly offered by vSchool and IBM. I strongly recommend you to evaluate that once, get some insights, and reach out to us, understand what this course is all about, for whom we have designed this, for what where this program can take you, and then you take your informed decision whether you would like to go for this or not, right? But we are here available for you to assist you and help you to take that right decision. And it is for sure a very good program. It has been benchmarked with programs offered by various other institutes, be it IIM Bangalore, ISB, Great Learnings, and so many other institutions. We have done a benchmarking. You will definitely find a lot more value add from this program. So you just cannot ignore it. Please reach out to our education consultants and explore the possibility of enrolling for this. And for your information, we have announced the admissions open, and the program is expected to commence by mid of January, around Sankranti, right? Thank you once again, all of you, for joining this session. Looking forward to have more interactions with those who would request for further information. As we end this session, you will receive a survey form with just 2 questions. Please do not forget to respond to those 2 questions. That helps us to improve our webinars in the days to come. Thank you very much, Srinidhi, and thanks a lot to Shayandeep. Please do convey our sincere regards to Shayandeep as well, and looking forward for more interactions. Thank you.
Yes. Thanks, Vikram. Thanks, everybody.
Have a good evening to all the participants. Bye-bye for now. Thank you.